I'd like to call this meeting of the St. Andrews Task Force to order. First thing that we have on the agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting from 8/27/12. I'd ask that we table that to the next meeting.
No problem.
Next on the agenda, we have public comment. If there's some folks that would like to speak before we get into the business. Tom.
I just have a question. I hope they're representatives of Miles here so we don't go through the same lack of communication we had before.
There are,
Okay.
and we're doing our best to make sure that that will not be an issue anymore.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. Next on the agenda is reports. I'll turn it over to Jim.
First, I just kind of tried to put the report section. I kept the agenda as close to a Booth Bay Board of Selectmen meeting agenda as possible so that there's a little bit of known commodity there. We put the report section together as the things that we came up with at our last meeting to let you know the status of those items. The first one is that the 6-month stay, we asked Lincoln County Healthcare formally in writing through via email if we could postpone the execution of the emergency room closure 6 months, and that has been confirmed that they received it, and we obviously have a meeting tomorrow morning to discuss with Lincoln County Healthcare on this topic. But I wanted to make sure that I reported back to you that we have formally requested that, they have received it. The next thing that we should probably take up though is for the tomorrow morning meeting, 9 a.m. here, which we have discussed that we can have privately, is that we should discuss what are the topics of that meeting so that I can touch base really quickly with Lincoln County Healthcare and put together an agenda so we have some kind of script to work from. I don't think it has to be very complex, but I do think you need to discuss what you altogether want to get accomplished in that meeting. And we can do that under the reports section or whole business. That's fine. I don't think we're stuck to process.
You want to throw it together now?
Whatever you want, sure, I'm with you, pal.
You guys comfortable doing it now?
Sure.
Okay. Now, even though we have sent the letter and they have said that they received it, I think that we need to follow up on the 6-month stay and reiterate how much we would like that. I think we need to ask them while we're all sitting there, what are the chances of them reversing their decision?
When is that meeting?
9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
With Miles and with
Lincoln County Healthcare
Lincoln
representatives, which I don't think we've discussed who the representatives are yet.
Because we've got a February LD hearing on the bill that Mr. McDonald filed. We should have some indication.
Yeah. Well, our meetings here are going to be open to the public, Tom. Tomorrow's meeting is just between the task force and the representatives from Lincoln County Health. We just want to be able to sit with them at the table and have some real hard, straightforward questions and have them answered and get the dialogue going that way.
Yeah.
You saw that I threw together a quick worksheet of the information that we asked Lincoln County Healthcare for and kind of what we received, and honestly, we've just been putting it together at the last minute. So I think Chuck walked in, I was still typing. So I haven't even verified with our Lincoln County Healthcare representative what I've received and what we think we asked and try to put together notes. I think that's something that I would like to discuss with them at the table too, is that we've asked for this, we think we asked for this, and this is what you think you received, and how do we put those two things together? So if I could add that to the list, information exchange. I discussed this. This is on my next thing of reports. You can see how disheveled I am. But we discussed with our attorney. He is actually very enthusiastic about the meeting, and so just continue on, have the meeting, but don't accept any terms yet or anything like that. Just continue to have discussion. He thought that was very productive. But he wanted to make sure that we didn't accept any terms while he's doing his work up. So we'll come back to him. I mean, Lincoln County Healthcare decides that there are some avenues that they would like to agree to, then let's just postpone it for a little while.
They want to come in tomorrow and say they've made a terrible mistake and everything's going away. I'm ready to accept that.
I agree. Any additional items that we want to get out of the way with Lincoln County Healthcare?
I mostly just want to have a chance to sit down and have an open dialogue and have them realize that, you know, while we are in an adversarial position, we're here to have a reasoned and measured conversation. I just want them to understand that. That's where we're coming from.
I don't know, at the risk of going over and over the same information, I would like a summary, a summation perhaps of what is the clear reason for the changes, because it seems like even I've got a lot of information coming in being on the task force, and I'm still hearing different things, and so I want to make sure that I can be clear in explaining to people who ask me what is a 2-sentence summary,
Okay.
rather than a 30-minute presentation that I would have to give everybody.
I'll just go loft this out to the task force too, is the logistical components of them executing this 9-month change in services. I have some big questions. A lot of them have to do with transportation and the ambulance service being able to come up to par. And I guess I would just like to, I need to know how Lincoln County Healthcare expects those things to happen in 9 months. Because they must have some kind of plan. And that's the one thing because worst case scenario is we're not able to accomplish anything, and still our ambulance service has to build up in our, and then we have to figure out how to get patients to miles.
Well, they may not, Jim. It may just be an internal business decision. So they may not have thought about the community as a whole.
And if that's the case, I guess I wanted to know that.
All right.
Is that all right to add that to the
Absolutely.
Any additional things that we need to keep in mind? I know I put you guys on the hot seat to answer these on the fly.
Well, I think that's a good start. I think that's for, you know, we don't want to make this too over-encumbering tomorrow. We want to be able to have, you know, I think that's a good, I personally think that's a good jump
It's
start.
a good start. I mean,
you know?
hopefully it won't be the last time. we
Amen
sit
to
down at
that,
the
yeah.
table.
You know, this isn't a one-time deal.
Unless, of course, they change their mind.
And to give our task force representatives a little bit of help, they didn't have any preparatory material in coming to either one of the first 2 meetings that we've had. They've literally, here's your information and run with it. So if it seems like sometimes they're standing up here trying to figure it out, it's because they are. So I'll just move on if that's okay. We did contact Kozak and Gayer and I talked to Julius Sembranowitz, which I'm getting really good at pronouncing his name. And we had a great conversation about, first of all, what our first expectations, and as we discussed in our first meeting, we wanted to narrow down the scope. Okay, we've got this great big huge problem, try to legally bring us to some kind of narrow scope. He was enthusiastic about the fact that the community is embracing that what is the task force charge here is to try to get behind this. He thought that was probably the biggest thing, is that you have the support of the community. So legally looking at this, you know, there with a community support, he knows that he can do something. He doesn't know what he can do. We tried to catch up today. We weren't able to catch up today. Just because his schedule and my schedule weren't clicking. He asked me what is the ultimate goal, and I guess I stumbled on this one. That's why I put it on my reports thing to discuss with you. And I said I guess the ultimate goal is to keep the emergency department open, because he said, you know, he wants to know what is the end result. And I said, I think that's what the community expects us to do, is keep the emergency department open. And anything short of that is something that needs to be reviewed by the task force.
And not to change the name to St. Andrews, whatever.
Right, and honestly, as one person speaking to the attorney that's gonna someday stand in front of everybody here and explain to them what our options are, I had to think about what our ultimate goal was, and I don't think I spoke out of turn.
I think the easiest way to summarize it is the community wants what the community currently has.
And I didn't want us to bite off more than we could chew either, because I could see the legal dollars clicking when he said that. He also gave us some guidance that I probably won't get into too much detail tonight, but he did give me a lot of encouragement because, like I said before, we're in uncharted territory as far as the municipality is concerned, and I've had a lot of doubt as we go forward. But he's supported everything that we've done to date. Said that we've done a good job of keeping our ducks in a row and staying organized. But then the first thing that he said is that the strategy needs to be kept in confidence. I mean, obviously, you're talking about legal strategy. At some point in time, and I know we put it on the agenda for tonight for an executive session, we don't have Julius here tonight, so we won't be able to have that executive session. But at some point in time, the four of you will need to sit down with Julius and talk about legal strategy. Something that we won't be able to share publicly, and it may be confusing to the public not to be able to talk about that strategy, but it really is the best leg that the attorney has in doing anything.
All we do is ask that the public trust us when we go in behind closed doors and discuss with our attorney that we have their best interests at heart.
At the very minimum, at the next meeting, we were thinking about setting up a phone conference. And when I say minimum, I'm trying to reserve what may or may not be our dollars in the future for the best use. We may have Julius come in person. It depends on what he finds in his first week.
Well, a face-to-face meeting with him would be good, but if we can minimize our legal fees by running a phone conference, I know that our phones here can be used for that, and we could always use your office to hold it.
But I'll tell you the biggest thing that I drew from the conversation was that he was encouraged by the way we've handled this so far and managed the response of the people in a kind of an organized fashion. And he was happy about that, happy about the support, and thought that after a little bit of review that he could give us a little bit of insight. We expect that sometime within the next week.
Okay. Excellent.
Good.
The information requests are next under reports. So we received a great deal of information from Lincoln County Healthcare, and I kind of fired off some quick emails back to them. I don't know if they've gotten to you yet, but thanking you for all the information that we have received. These are the audits that we received from Lincoln County Healthcare, and I haven't read them yet. Have you guys read them?
We've seen them.
Okay, because
We've been through them each year.
Yeah, that's a lot of information. So I put them into two different binders, which I'm going to keep here at the town office. We obviously don't want to print off like 1,000 copies of these documents, but I'll circulate the electronic copies to the task force, and then the people that jump onto the work group can have electronic copies. And then I'll keep a paper copy for anybody that wants to come in and review them. It's going to be hard for us to manage the information, but we'll try to keep it in the library here so that if anybody wants to come in and review this information, it's readily available. That's usually the hardest thing with government, is trying to make sure everything is transparent and readily available. Additionally, I gave you a quick worksheet. Let's see if I can reference it. So a quick worksheet, and it's kind of like a checklist of what I think I've asked for and what I think we've received. Now, obviously, we can bounce this off Lincoln County Healthcare, so there's some difference of understanding on what we've asked for and what they think we've asked for. So I'm going to take this checklist and I'll bounce it off them. I noticed some of the audits were combined audits. The way I think I understand that is that probably has the financials of all three organizations in one.
Depends on what year you're talking about.
Right. And I saw that. There was kind of a change in auditing style. The other items that we asked for, we haven't touched on the organizational structure documents yet. I don't think we've gotten that far. But we knew that was kind of a harder request. Those aren't things you probably bring up often. And then the Navigant documents, I have some questions that I want to ask Lincoln County Healthcare before we put them on the spot tonight about what we've received and what we would like to see. I've got a really large document from Navigant. Haven't read it, but I want to ask some questions to Lincoln County Healthcare before we kind of move on. But you'll see from my checklist, there's a lot, we received a lot of information. All of it is right here. And we're at the point where we're going to need some help to digest it.
Well, and Lincoln County has offered and wants to be part of that process, so.
At this point in time, all we've done is receive. Literally no reading at all. So I had put that on our agenda to come up under old business and set work groups, and if we can start assembling some people that can read through this with the assistance of Lincoln County Healthcare, well, that's probably a noble next step. The skill set inventory, Miss Luke came in and took the sign-in sheet that is hopefully circulating right now, and she put it into an Excel spreadsheet, which I have here on my computer. I brought just in case we have to reference back to it, which is kind of categorized everything that we got on the sign-in sheet before. It was pretty, I think, 57 names on there, and some people were just in attendance and some people were here to contribute, and I don't think we really have a clear and definitive picture of who wants to contribute and who doesn't. So don't imply that I've volunteered and the town knows that I'm readily available and willing to participate. Please come to us. Please continue to engage us. We're trying to put this together the best we can. But Miss Luke is a godsend, and she went through that information really quickly and organized it in a better fashion than I ever would have. Thank you. But next we need to verify the people that want to start on this first surge, and obviously I put that into the old business section. Under set work groups and economic impact, both of those things, they probably shouldn't be in reports. That really does fall under the set work groups, but I was making this up as I went along. Financial report, which is ironic because I'm used to reporting to the Board of Selectmen on a very complex financial report, but I want to keep this in the same structure as a town financial report. So up to this date, we've received $3,500 in donations. Those are two donations, so a $3,000 donation and a $500 donation. And I don't have any clarity on how much publicity those donors want at this point in time. So I'm going to hold off on their names. That is public information. It's pretty easy to find. But we'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they want to stay confidential. So we have $3,500 in the St. Andrews Project account, but we also know that Julius is going to cost us about 100% of that. As guidance to anybody that wants to make donations, that the town of Boothbay can receive those donations here at the town office. If you're inclined to make a donation, town of Boothbay, make sure you tell them that it's for the St. Andrews Project, and we'll make sure it ends up in that account. So that's the financial report. It's not very complex. We received $3,500, but we expect to expend that pretty quickly.
Is that information going to be put in the paper so other people besides us sitting right here will know? We did send
a quick blurb to the register at one point in time, but I think you're right. We probably should reiterate that because as the project gains momentum, people are going to want to know.
Yeah.
And this
money and expertise.
Well, that's yeah.
This project won't fund itself. Essentially, we will run out of money, especially if we intend on using Julius as our legal expert. He's not expensive.
If I remember right, last week you did say that the money would go, anything left over, and I say that in quotes, would go to the ambulance?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That should be put in the paper.
The ambulance capital improvement fund.
Yeah.
So the Boothbay Board of Selectmen, since they're going to act as the fiduciary, we're going to act as the fiduciary agent for this account. I've already said anything left over, that's where it's going to go.
But I mean, that should be in the paper.
And then also people should recognize that the Booth Bay Board of Selectmen haven't given this permission to run in the negative either. So if we run out of money, we run out of money, and we essentially stop. Really, my staff time and all the paper copies and stuff that we're doing right now, we're not really keeping track of. So the town of Booth Bay is already kind of on the hook a little bit. So,
Tom?
Chuck, when you talk tomorrow morning to the group, are you going to give them information that we need, suggested information? For instance, any correspondence or agreement of any sort between the Gregorys and Miles, or any between the Gregorys and St. Andrews at that time. And that's one thing I thought of, and the relationship and interrelationship of this whole problem and the St. Andrews Village. I mean, those are two things I'd like to see.
Okay.
Especially any agreement that has anything to do with between the Gregorys and St. Andrews Hospital when they gave the land.
Yep.
I think those are
the topics that will be brought up.
okay. Good.
I'm not sure where this goes, if it goes under reports or new business, but the last thing, I spoke with Valerie when we first got here, but and I think you've added it to your hit list, is the agreement. All 4 towns have had that joint agreement put before them. Julius did ask what authority is the task force working under, and I told him about the agreement. He wants to make sure that we have entered into the agreement before we actually do anything. So if you could bring that to the Booth Bay Harbor Board of Selectmen. Additionally, a really good question that was posed, and I just want clarity, that Stacy had asked in an email, is that the executive or leadership, or I'm not sure, committee had asked my role in this, and I've just been acting as facilitator and the staff. So they asked the question of why each of the town managers were not part of the task force, and I just throw that back out at Booth Bay Harbor. So if you want your town manager to be a part of this, I don't care sharing the load, but
Love to have them.
yeah. So they asked the question, I don't know the answer, so I'll throw it back out to Booth Bay Harbor Selectmen to answer that.
We will meet this Monday, the 10th, and I expect this will be on the agenda, and I'll make sure to touch base with Tom beforehand to make sure that it gets attended to.
My input is that I'd say I don't think we need 2 town managers to do what we've been doing. I think we'll end up just bumping into each other, but I also didn't have the answer to that question.
If your board has any questions Monday night while you're meeting about the agreement, give us a call. I'll keep my cell phone on, and give Jim a call. One of us can step out of our meeting and answer the questions for you.
That sounds good. Thank you.
So that's all I have for reports. I think that's more than enough information at this time.
Any questions for Jim?
No.
All right.
Cool, baby.
All right. We'll move on to old business and set the work groups.
So I think we need to get some clarity on who's going to do what parts of these major items. Right now we have a lot of financial information. We don't have to wait to get any more to have anybody start on looking through this. We had some people volunteer, but if those people are here tonight that are interested in this topic, I'd like to know now, so we can start working on it. And I also understand if people are not comfortable with volunteering publicly.
Absolutely.
So I guess we'd throw it out there is to contact me as soon as possible. We now are ready to move on digesting information. So let me know. We have some of the volunteers are in our spreadsheet that Freddie has put together. But I think we need as many people as we can put together.
So what that boils down to, folks, if you're here just to listen and absorb, that's great. If you actually want to be involved in going through any of this or any of the other things that's coming up, you need to let us know so that we have a working idea of people that really want to be heavily involved and those that are just making sure you're holding our feet to the fire.
Do you want us to speak up, or would you?
If you are, it's up to you. If you feel comfortable, if you feel comfortable speaking up, that's great. If not, let us know in private.
I'll be happy to do anything you need.
And your name,
Short
ma'am?
of cutting grass.
This is
We'll take care of the grass. And I'm new, so make sure that you repeat your name.
Valerie has my name.
Valerie has.
We've got it all right here. Thanks,
Okay.
Margaret.
My name is also Helen Fung.
Why don't we just review what our work groups are,
Okay.
and then maybe we can.
So I shouldn't have erased what we had up here.
No, that's.
Well,
fine.
we've
We
got
can
the
rewrite
work group. Have you got it? Or I've got it. You've got Representative McDonald's group working on the
Community
the
hospital.
community hospital. If that becomes an issue, we're hoping that's way down the food chain instead of at the top, actually. But there's
And I
the
have 4 people who have said they'd like to help with that.
excellent.
Is that enough, Bruce?
I still don't know, still formulating what we need.
It's
to
enough for
know.
now, but you may need more in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, anybody who is interested, it would involve educating ourselves about how the several small hospitals that do exist in Maine, how they exist, what their finances are, how they're governed, how do they make it. You know, we need to set up a list of critical questions to ask people, all those sorts of things. So I can do some of it, but I really need some help.
And there's Booth Bay Region Ambulance Service.
I think we have representation from the ambulance service tonight, several. So one of the action items that one of the work groups that we want to put together is help the ambulance service figure out what the impact of changes in April are going to be, so that we can kind of incorporate that into our action plan. So you guys are gonna have a role in this anyway, so let us know what else we can do to help. And anybody that wants to volunteer in that effort, I know that the ambulance service relies on volunteers a lot already.
Scott, do you want to be the point person for that? Just so we have one person to talk to. If you're not around, then Robbie?
Yeah, well, they can direct it to,
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just going back to community hospital, one of the possible variations on that theme is a joint effort of community hospital and ambulance together. There are communities that do that. If I could get somebody from the ambulance service to say, you know, that I can work with them or whatever on this idea of possibly developing a joint plan for community ambulance, community hospital together as a joint effort, that would be of interest.
I think down the road that's a good idea.
It's something to explore because
Yeah.
we need a plan B and a plan C.
the ambulance is stated Booth Bay Region.
Right.
That's what it is,
Right.
Booth Bay Region.
And the number 3 was actually the Lincoln County healthcare component in general, absorbing all their information.
So this is people that want to work hand in hand with Lincoln County Healthcare on their transition. They put together a transition team, and we'll need some people to work together with them. And the reason why these need to be work groups is essentially the towns cannot do all of this all together. We can't work together with Lincoln County Healthcare and work out alternatives at the same time. We just don't have enough time as staff. We have a staff of 12, and 6 of those are people working on the road. So.
And number 4 was Lincoln County regional planning.
That was for transportation, wasn't it?
And transportation issues if things don't go well. Mary Ellen was,
I think that's economic impact and transportation.
well,
Yeah, we
economic
can
impact.
combine those.
4 and 5. Yeah.
And that's what
4 or 5 was economic impacts.
that's one thing that I didn't, when we were writing them down, I didn't distinguish that they were 2 different things, but I felt like they were similar. And where is Mary Ellen?
She's over here.
Thank you.
Okay. But I think those are things that can be jointly done, right?
Yeah.
Lincoln County, has Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission met since the last time we met?
No, we got a meeting coming up.
Okay.
Jim, can we open a window here?
Yes.
Would you?
The air conditioning on.
I guess I have a question about the transition team.
Yes.
Those actual words came out of the late July meeting that we attended at the hospital, I think, where you guys had mentioned that you were going to put together a transitional team. When you use that term, do you know, did you mean hospital staff were going to be the transitional team that were going to work with the ambulance service and work with the community leaders to help with the transition? Were you expecting members of the public to join a group to work with hospital staff, or it's okay either way? I mean,
There's a community advisory component to the transition task force, and we saw that, although I don't think anything's set in stone, we saw that as an opportunity to have community involvement. And we haven't really started because we weren't really sure whether it would be the task force that would do it,
right.
or so.
Right, and I guess
we want to make sure there's not duplication, or we're not duplicating efforts. So we're happy to work with.
And we've had several members contact us from the community that are interested in being on that transition task force. And what we've said is we're waiting to see how this pans out so that we don't duplicate those services. That's action.
So we just need to share notes then.
Yeah, maybe we can do some of that tomorrow.
Okay.
No problem.
Because essentially these are all items that the town would try to take on as items of concern and change of service. These are all things that the town would do, but obviously the town cannot do this without support. This is a large change in service and the town needs some assistance.
Now, I understand Lincoln County Health having a transition team, but I think the transition team is looking at a different goal than we are. Now, I don't mind working with them and having some folks work with them and transitioning to where they want to go, but that's not the ultimate goal of the community or this task force. The ultimate goal of this community is to save that ER. Now, I can understand you guys not want to duplicate what we're wanting to do, but I don't think that your transition team is going to be looking at the same things that we are.
That's
so
fine.
if you're holding off on your transition team because of that, I wouldn't.
No, we're not.
Well,
Okay.
there's two pieces. Like there's the transformation task force that we're operationally looking at everything we need to do between now and the final transition. And that group has already been set. There's work groups that are reporting to that group. For instance, I'm working with Scott on ambulance service questions and issues and data and how we're going to move forward in supporting the service. That's one of our groups as well. In fact, I'll be chatting with Scott about the other one he's going to do so that I can have some crossover with that. But so that group is underway, and what we were looking for is people to help advise through that through community group, and that's what we were waiting to see how this was going to pan out, to add to that group or do a separate group, whatever. So maybe we can chat more about that tomorrow and how we see that working, or you see it working, and maybe it is going to be a completely different task force.
Okay.
Jim,
Thank you.
this is not a transition from the present plan to one that's more acceptable to us, but it's a transition of St. Andrews, right?
The town needs to be prepared for the next steps. If the service, if this service changes as the way Lincoln County Healthcare is proposed, there's some significant hurdles that we need to be prepared for.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's what the transition team needs to be focused on, is working with Lincoln County Healthcare on that plan, without looking at any alternative plans. So that will take some community members to help us with that too. I mean, I'd like to be a part of that, but honestly, I'm stretched.
Well, maybe Tom could too. I mean,
So maybe we should call number 3, right, like what you have there, community advisory.
Yeah, that's
And
why I
then
wrote
that's
it
the
in there.
crossover. Mm-hmm.
I think the transition team, that's what I picked up on your word, and then I was just trying to get it down on board. Community advisory.
Panel.
We could haggle over phrases.
Yeah.
That's what they're gonna be doing.
We get the idea.
Another things, and two other things that I probably should be on there is there's, as people have volunteered, some people are more interested in going over the raw data with us, which I didn't know those people existed, but thank you. So I would say, you know, data analysis, we could use those people.
Well,
Is
a
that
lot of
okay?
that.
Yep. I'm glad these people exist. And then, you know, we mentioned another thing that we really didn't talk about too much, is that we're gonna need money if we're gonna continue on a course. So maybe we enlist some fundraisers.
A little fundraising.
That might be a work group of in itself. So all they have to worry about is trying to find donors for the project.
That sounds good.
What was that last one, Jim?
Fundraising.
Fundraising. The gentleman, then the lady.
I'm concerned that none of these address what I consider to be the fundamental underlying issue, which is who owns the hospital. And that gets back to this question of governance and the question of...
I think the four people at this table are going to handle that one for you very nicely.
Well, it seems to me it needs to be an item that gets discussed. It hasn't been discussed at all tonight. We've been proceeding as though somehow we're supposed to get together with LCH, and if they change their minds, et cetera, et cetera. That leaves open the question of who owns the hospital.
Which is why I asked for the documents that had to do with the family that gave it and
All those things are being worked on.
And honestly, this is where I see Julius's role as more important, because he's going to be able to dissect those documents and figure out what they legally say better than we can. So,
But believe me, those are issues that we are addressing, that are being looked at.
and we've given Julius a tremendous amount of information to comb over, and I must have really good people that work with him, because he's encouraged us that he can get some kind of scope in about a week.
I'd be glad to help with that, Jim, if I could be of assistance.
Absolutely. I don't think
probably at a lot lower rate than.
I just had a point of clarification. On the data analysis, what are you asking for help? Which kind of data are we supposed to analyze? Is it the data about what Lincoln County has done, or is it data about who's on the peninsula and how many heart attacks have we had? And
I think we're going to rely on Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission to help us kind of look at some of the demographic type data. I need people to look at the historical information and try to see if we can come up to the same assumptions that Lincoln County Healthcare has. Giving them the benefit of the doubt, we're going to look at all of this financial information, and we're going to see the same path that they saw. But but we want to do that. We want to do our due diligence and look through this and say, okay, we see it too. So a lot of number crunching, and then we also have the report from Navigant that they use to determine their strategy. We want people to look at that too and help us pose questions to that. As I read through this is the question I come up with. Honestly, if the task force members or staff at any of the towns look at these and pose their questions, we're going to have a very narrow view, and we're only going to come up with a very limited amount of questions. So we need people to help us.
I'd be glad to help out with that.
Thank you, sir. And we have you on our list? Okay, excellent.
Bruce?
Is there isn't on this list of communication or something like that? I know there's that one Google group that somebody started, but is there a Facebook presence? How can people who are, like people who are here just interested on a day-to-day basis to look in on what's going on? Is there a Facebook?
Facebook, Twitter,
I don't know well enough how Facebook works. I have to admit to to know what I'm exactly talking about, but I understand a lot of people use Facebook these days, and instead of email. And so I'm just wondering if there's any way to get something going there, just.
Bruce just brought it up,
There was
social
somebody
media.
on the skills
Yeah,
list, I
social
don't
media.
remember whom, that volunteered for social media, so.
Yeah,
Is there
we did have a donated skill on our skills list of
So for
communication.
social media, so somebody's gonna take care of that?
I'm not sure we need it as a work group, because I would kind of like to just pawn that off to the person that's volunteered to offer it.
Just as long as it happens.
There is a Google email group that is in existence, it has some postings on it, and one of the questions I was going to ask was whether people were aware that it existed. And John Pankowitz set it up. As a result, he's the person who spoke up 2 weeks ago. He wasn't at last week's meeting, I don't know whether he's here tonight, but he's the person. And you can find it just by doing a Google search for Google Groups St. Andrews. And that will-
St. Andrew's Hospital.
St. Andrew's Hospital, correct.
This
Otherwise you
afternoon-
end up with playing golf in Scotland.
Which is not a bad thing.
If you have a Google account, you can join that group, and there's some discussion going on. It's very interesting.
And Google accounts are free. I mean,
Yeah.
I logged on with my Google account and looked at it this afternoon. It's pretty well organized, pretty easy to use. It was one of the things I meant to put on our hit list of things to take care of tonight, but I'll share that link with the task force members and the press, and maybe we can get that discussion forum out there. I think it's helpful because we'll have limited amount of meetings before April, and discussion needs to be continuous. But who set it up again? I forget.
John Pankowitz.
Thank you to him, because it's going to be a helpful forum, and one that the town doesn't really have to manage, so it's hands-free. So we appreciate it. So we're getting some names, but if you're really interested in any one of these items, and I'm just going to take away communications, if that's all right. Communications I think there's a responsibility of the task force to figure out what we want to get out there, and then we'll give it to a point man to put it out. So I don't want to clog up a work group with volunteers to work on that.
Yeah, I think really we only need one person for that.
Yeah. And Facebook, man, we can set that up in a heartbeat. It's one of the few skill sets I possess.
There's actually two of you at the table that could do it.
Oh yeah, let's give it to Valerie. She likes that on Facebook. So if you haven't spoken up, but you really want to play an active part in this, and that goes for the people that are paying attention on Channel 7, which there are a lot of people paying attention on Channel 7. I've probably met them all in the last week.
If you haven't, I have.
Right. Please come in, be active. We'll try to set up times in which people can come in, and we'll try to, the town of Boothbay will do the best to manage so that we're not duplicating efforts, but we really just need volunteers. Lots of interested volunteers.
I'll do data analysis.
That would be great. You're absolutely the perfect person to data analysis.
Show me down there too, Jim. I've started reading the ACA, so I like to compare the two.
Yeah, you've got my name, Jim.
Yes. So I'm going to circulate this to the people that I know that want to do data analysis as the audits, because that's the first thing. It's just too much information. It's monotonous, and really we just need to get eyes on it. If we can get one person to do, one or two people to comb through each individual audits and kind of summarize it to the task force, and that's probably the best we can do. And Peggy would be great. Thank you for volunteering.
Jim, when they look through the documents, is there like a list of 3 questions that they can be asking themselves, or is there something specific that they should be looking for? I don't have any experience with this. I'm happy to look through a document, but I want to know what I should sum up and what I should be looking for at the end.
I guess to give it my own thoughts is that I'd be looking to prove what Lincoln County Healthcare has told us about the financial data first, and see
again,
trend
we'd be
lines.
happy to help you with that.
Right, and I think we can use them to say, okay, you have said, now show me here where we can follow this. So to see the trend lines in the financial information, that's what we want to see. I don't think we're going to find a smoking gun If we do, that'd be great too, so.
To answer a little bit, anytime you get involved in something like that, you start with a broad picture and looking for everything. And stuff will come out and you'll want additional clarification,
Right.
additional
Exactly.
information. Just other things, everything looks fine. But the important thing is to have a number of different people looking at it so that you get the perspectives, you get a macro perspective on the thing. But you don't start with a set number of questions because you could very well be overlooking something that is major.
With Peggy as a resource, she can probably help us figure out, you take a financial report and understand it and then start working backwards and see if you can follow the trends.
We have to find out what kind of data they're tracking, what assumptions they're making about what's important and what isn't, and see what they're not tracking, and basically see if they've done a complete analysis.
Yeah, I mean, if this was the same as a municipal audit, it would be pretty easy for our staff to look through it and make assumptions. But this is not the same. It's very different.
Sounds like it's right up your alley.
It is.
Set up the work groups, economic impact, be done through LCRP.
So that's one thing that I'd like to get some clarity with Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen, you still back there? How does the task force best support Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission in getting work done? Because I'm not sure I know the answer.
Well, we've started to do a couple outlines of short-term economic impact study and something a little bit longer, depending on, how this group proceeds. And we've done a little bit of data collection. And we also have been doing a little bit of vacationing, so I'm not as organized as I'd like to be. Certainly would welcome, people to be part of a group. We'll do some data collection and working with we're trying to identify some professional economists to help us with the modeling a little bit on foreseeable future. So if there's others who want to actually join us with looking at the big picture and the little picture, I think that'd be great to do that.
Is there any specific data that we can bring you that you're looking for?
Well, I'll probably look at the stuff that folks have provided already and then catch up with Cindy about some specific questions I have. So
Okay.
Not for now. So hopefully next week I'll have a little bit better report.
And I've been impressed by the Booth Bay region's skill set. That I've talked to a lot of people that have various skills that either retire to the Booth Bay region or just live here. So if there's anybody that's paying attention on Channel 7 that can bring anything to a professional economist point of view that's out there paying attention, that wouldn't surprise me.
The amount of talent on this peninsula is amazing.
It is amazing.
Mary Ellen, when's our next meeting?
The 18th.
The 18th?
What day of the week that is.
Do we have a location yet?
It's going to be in our office in Wisconsin.
Oh, that's the executive, right?
I'm sorry?
Is that executive or full
Yes.
board?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've got our whole business. The only thing is that the clarity of the work groups is not there, but maybe we need more time.
I think it's gonna take a little more time to focus that, but we're getting better every time we do this.
Honestly, we've met, this is 6 days from the last meeting?
Right.
With a long weekend in between, so.
Can you get us copies of the skill set inventory that you have, and maybe we have some recommendations on where we can send people, or ask those folks if they're interested in serving on those certain work groups?
Because you see on the computer, if you can burn those up for tomorrow morning so we can look them over and have a little hard copy to make sure everybody's on there that should be on there as well.
The information that people have given us is obviously for public consumption, but I just say, let's just treat it as confidential as possible. If people like their privacy.
As they should.
I just have one other, in terms of making this all actionable, would it make sense to agree that we're going to have a meeting of each of these task forces before the next meeting, or at some, within 2 weeks or within a week, or, what's the game plan?
I really need to see who's coming forward, because that's the one thing I learned in my job is that everybody else has another job, a paying job, and that they're putting these people together to work is sometimes challenging. So I need to see who are the individuals that are interested in working on these things before I even know when they can possibly meet. So it really is upon the people that are are excited to engage on these things, to just be forward about it. Come to us and say, I want to work on this, and we'll try to get those people in the same room.
Yeah, I would think that the soon, even though time is of an essence, I would think that the soonest that we could get together the groups for a meeting would be at least 2 weeks.
Well, I don't even think the work groups need to, the work groups are not appointed officials.
Right.
So they don't need to work within the constraints of the public process. They can work like staff members.
And they also, at some level, can come and go. I mean, some people may come in and work for a little bit and then drift out, and somebody else comes in, so long as we're keeping these precepts moving forward, you know.
The data for analysis will be here in the library, won't it, so that volunteers could come and go. They wouldn't have to have a specific meeting. They could come review.
The one thing that I'm not sure how we'll do is to keep track of where somebody leaves off and the continuity in their review. You know, if one person looks at this audit and one person looks at that audit, are we comparing them on the same level? I'll figure that out as we go along. Much like everything else.
Maybe we can put a blank sheet of paper in between each one, and then as each volunteer goes through it, they can just put right in there where they left off.
Questions, comments,
Yep.
you know, this is what I did.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
I'm assuming though you want people to look at everything so that you get 4 or 5 sets of eyes looking at it.
We're certainly going to want to get people to go through everything, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you might want to have a comment sheet or something there to begin to put it, but ultimately we got to get together and start talking about it.
Right. Individuals can narrow the scope, but the truth is the group is going to do better. So please, one more reminder to everybody, be forward about your investment in helping the task force. Be very, very forward, because we're literally taking as much information as we can, we're digesting as fast as we can. And one of the hardest things is managing the volunteer efforts. So we'll need that assistance as well.
May I ask a question?
Certainly.
Does a simple title search fall under data analysis, or is that something that you all are taking care of?
I'd say I'd take that under data analysis. That's,
the reason I ask, it may sound stupid, but earlier today I was doing some research about who the owners of record are over at St. Andrews Village, with the land and the buildings over there. So I went to the assessor's books in Boucher Harbor online. And the hospital isn't in the assessor's books. The old Victorian building on Western Avenue is listed, but nothing else is listed on the assessor's online database. Not the new family health place, nothing. Which seemed very strange to me.
if it's in the hospital's name, it may very well be tax exempt and kind of.
But the churches are on there, the library's on there, you know, it's just interesting to me that and St. Andrews Village is in the hospital's name, but it's on the assessors.
I'm just brainstorming out loud, but
yeah,
a lot of times with exemptions.
So am I, and so I hope that would be part of the data analysis that we would do.
A lot of times with exemptions, the way that they're handled, because they only get reviewed when they change.
Right.
Because sometimes they're not kept as up to date as everything else. So, but that's one thing that needs research.
The only thing that's in the registry of deeds as of a month ago was the deed from the Gregories to St. Andrews Hospital. And that was it, St. Andrews Hospital. Now, it's my understanding there's something on there now that has been put on recently, but I haven't been up there to check it. I will do that.
If we could use your skills, Mr. Tavener, to help us in that, that would be a tremendous amount of help, and we can work together on that.
Sure, because as far as I'm concerned, St. Andrews Hospital owns the land on which it exists. But I do understand that there was something recently filed by, I don't know, Lincoln County Healthcare. I don't know who did it, because I haven't seen it.
By the way, that makes a difference of around $20 million. We've been talking about 3,500, etc. There's $30 million of issue as to who owns that hospital.
Sure is.
I'll be glad to run up there tomorrow. Well, I can call some of my friends up there and I can find out immediately and get a copy of whatever's been filed, because it's my understanding something has been filed.
Outstanding.
Absolutely.
It'd be interesting to see any of the deeds that they've got
Make
up
it so.
there, because those would have the covenants on it as well.
Yeah, an original copy of the deed is something that we do need.
I've got that in my office.
I'll take it, I'll take a copy, I'll come up there personally and grab it.
It's a very simple deed, just from the Gregory family, Phil and his wife and the others, to St. Andrew's Hospital. That's all it says.
Well, that's one
Straight
thing.
deed. No restrictions, no nothing on it.
There's no restrictions on the deed.
That's why I think they're probably, knowing Dr. Phil, I think he probably had a side agreement. I don't know, but I think, I mean, I can't imagine the Gregory family giving over that valuable piece of property without some agreement as to what its use would be. I don't know, though. I have never seen it.
And your comment was based on the fact that it might not be exempt anymore? Is that what you were?
No, my comment is, it's a serious question, who owns it? And right now, as far as I know, it's owned by either Lincoln County Healthcare, or last week, Stacy said that they have a parent, which is Maine Healthcare. So either Maine Healthcare or Lincoln County Healthcare owns the hospital.
That's not true in the registry of deeds.
Well,
I don't believe that, but you.
as far as they're certainly acting like it, and the proposal that Bruce has recommended would require producing a hospital. Well, how much will that cost? It would cost, if we started from scratch, we could buy it back from LCH for $30 million, for example. Well, that's obviously not going to happen.
Okay.
So the question, this discussion tomorrow really needs, in my opinion, to concern itself with the issue of who owns it. What are we talking about?
If you guys, once you guys look at the financial statements, it'll become evident who owns the property.
Fair enough.
Tom,
And then we can talk
wouldn't
about it.
any kind of deed like that have to be registered for?
There'd have to be a deed from St. Andrew's Hospital.
But you were talking about the side agreement. Wouldn't anything like that have to be
No.
registered to have any
Not
validity?
necessarily, no.
No?
No, but if there were an agreement, which I don't know, we gotta research it too, I have no idea the answer to the question. I do know the answers to the question, which we answered last week. There hasn't been a transfer or anything added or anything like that on our property, at least not that we know of. And if there is a letter from any donor that says this asset is to be used for X, then that's how that asset is used. So if there is an agreement, we must have it somewhere, and it would be our obligation to use it for its intended purpose. So, and as I said, you'll see on the financial statements who owns what as far as property goes. So
Fair enough.
that'd be evident.
Ma'am?
If we could understand the roles that these different entities play, it would be helpful. There's something called St. Andrew's Hospital. They own the land that the cottages sit on over at St. Andrew's Village. They own the inn at St. Andrew's Village. There's another entity called St. Andrew's Village Association or something like that owns the cottages. Then there's Lincoln County Healthcare. Are they a body that administers everybody else's property, or do they also own property? You know, if we could understand how all of these different entities function, it might clear up some of the mess. You know, is there an entity called St. Andrew's Hospital that stands alone?
That's why.
Because they are the owner of record of some property in town.
That's why our information request to Lincoln County Healthcare
Yeah.
has been the organizational documents, because we need to kind of see those and we need to see them in line so that we can make assumptions based on who owns
Yeah,
what.
if we knew who the they were, is it St. Andrew's Hospital, is it, you know?
And from a municipal
Not to beat a dead
perspective,
horse, but
it has a lot to do with tax exempt status too.
Exactly.
Because only the hospital as an organization has the tax exempt status. So if the hospital doesn't own a piece of property, it's no longer tax exempt.
Unless it's owned by another tax exempt institution.
But not necessarily automatically. It would still have to go through the process of being analyzed as a tax exempt property.
Well, as I understand it, and my understanding is very crude about all this, there was an agreement made between the Board of Trustees. St. Andrews once had a Board of Trustees, as far as I know.
Right.
It still does, but it has no authority. At one point, it had a Board of Trustees that had authority. It acted as the owner, if you like, of the hospital. And it gave the hospital, it transferred responsibility and ownership, as far as I know, to Lincoln County Healthcare, another 501(c). And there were some covenants, according to the Booth-Bear Register of a couple of weeks ago, to the effect that the hospital would be kept where it is and doing what it's doing itself. And according to the editorial in the Register, it's already the case that that covenant is broken by this move. So,
Well, we're going to help clear up a lot of that, I think, tomorrow
Right.
when we meet with the task force.
but I think I can't remember whether it was at one of these meetings I mentioned that I was once involved with a not-for-profit in Massachusetts. And in Massachusetts, at least, I meant to look it up in Maine. I haven't done it in Maine yet. But in Massachusetts, the Board of Trustees answers to the corporation. And the corporation is appointed by the Board of Trustees. So that says that if it's true, if the same thing applies in Maine, then that means that the Lincoln County Board of Trustees reports to its corporation, who's appointed by the Board of Trustees. And what was pointed out earlier is that the public meeting that was held and the two votes that were taken imply that that Board of Trustees is not acting in the interests of the people on the peninsula. And hence all this subsequent meetings and the establishment of a task force, et cetera. And as has been pointed out, that task force is operating on the assumption that the move by the Board of Trustees of Lincoln County Healthcare is not to be executed. Something else has got to happen. In other words, either a Board of Trustees has to be set up for St. Andrews, independent of Lincoln County Health, or the county, the peninsula has to assume ownership of the hospital, which it could get by agreement from Lincoln County Healthcare. For example, these are just thoughts off the top of my head.
I think Stacy had explained the trustee structure at the last meeting. Yeah. Basically, there's the St. Andrews Board of Trustees, correct?
Correct.
There's a Lincoln County Health Board of Trustees, and there's a Miles Board of Trustees,
Correct.
and all three of those boards are basically the same people.
Yes.
Thank you.
The real question is,
There's a fourth entity too, just so.
Maine
we're
Healthcare.
clear about that.
What's the fourth entity?
The fourth entity is the physician group called Lincoln County Medical Group. So there are 4 entities, 1 parent, and then 1 parent over the top of us, which is Maine Health. And we're happy tomorrow to go into discussion about how does that work and what does that mean.
And a lot of the direction that you're discussing are things that we proposed to Julius that I just need to have more clarification on first, before I think we're even publicly ready to comment at all.
by the way, you can call anything a Board of Trustees, even if it's just a Board of Advisors. You can call it a Board of Trustees. The question, for example, St. Andrews supposedly has a Board of Trustees. And my impression had been that if it was a Board of Trustees, then they had certain responsibilities and authority. But the question I would ask tomorrow is what are the responsibilities and authority of the St. Andrews Board of Trustees? As far as I know, they have none.
Okay.
Another good question, by the way, is who appoints these various boards of trustees?
They appoint themselves.
Self-perpetuating.
That was a question I asked at the July 31st meeting, and they said they appoint themselves.
They elect people to fill the vacancies.
Right,
as the-
self-perpetuating.
But it comes to the recommendation of other board members.
Experience exists from people who sit on the board.
That's right. It's self-perpetuating.
It is, yeah.
Okay, do we have anything else under old business?
I don't.
No, no, absolutely not.
Okay.
One just point of clarification, are we making Peggy the point person for the data analysis?
I don't think we are at this point in time, but I think we'll probably.
I would kind of recommend that she do that.
Yeah.
We've got one person to kind of coordinate.
I'll sit down with Peggy and try to figure out what exactly how much time she has to invest. If that's all right.
Bruce, you have a quick
So
comment?
Chuck, on how and when do you expect to report out to the rest of us the results of tomorrow's meeting,
Next Tuesday.
next Tuesday? So might you, on the other hand, put something on the group or something like that? If you know something tomorrow?
I can recap.
I mean, I'm not asking you to do anything you don't feel comfortable with, but there's a lot of people, there's a lot of questions. All of us. So if you have good answers, the sooner you get them out, the better.
I can try to. I'll figure out a means to recap the meeting after we bounce it off of Julius. I want to make sure that the meeting is constructive enough that Lincoln County Healthcare feels free to speak. And then I can recap the meeting. I can call the Blue Bay Register and hopefully meet their deadline. If we're meeting at 9 a.m., I know the deadline is usually Monday or Tuesday, but they kind of take some liberties with us sometimes.
5 p.m. Tuesday, I think, is their drop dead date.
So I'll try to get a recap sent out.
And some of that information that we're going to get tomorrow, we're going to give to Julius, so we won't be able to.
Right. Anything that affects legal strategy, we're going to stay away from.
If you think it's premature for you to say anything as a result of tomorrow's meeting, then just let us know. I mean, if we know we're not hearing anything because it's still understood.
I think
We'll let you know. We can know as soon as we can let you know. You know, there's some stuff we're going to have to hold closer to the vest, and we'll get out information as quickly as we can.
Okay, we'll move on to new business and recap the next meeting.
Well, I don't think we have to assume that we've done a tremendous amount of work at this meeting, and that our next meeting can be a similar structure. Is that we probably need to report back to you do we have enough people filling these work groups?
Right.
Because I can tell you as of right now, I'm not sure, but I can tell you after I start hearing from people, I can report back to you. I don't have to give you names. I can tell you we have X amount of people working on this work group, and it seems like they're moving in a forward fashion. But right now, I'm not sure we've covered that completely. So that's one of the things that we need to recap at the next meeting is have we filled the work groups sufficiently?
There's also a possibility that we'll meet with Julius.
Absolutely. I think that we want to move forward like we are going to meet with Julius in some fashion next Tuesday.
Just a suggestion, if you're going to meet with Julius, it might save some money. If you guys went to Portland, Augusta, wherever,
Which was Portland. I go there every day.
and meet with him there.
Right. And that's why the first meeting that we had was via telephone conference and just me, because we don't have to worry about, I can get him started down the path. But as soon as the scope starts to narrow, we want these guys making the decisions. Other items that we need to follow up on, I guess, all the action items from the work groups. I'm not sure what we'll get done in a week.
Or if we have a little bit of information from the work groups, and we can start to analyze the information from them.
So we'll report back any status on the work groups as it changes.
And we also need to report back, no matter what we've done in the meantime, what comes out of tomorrow's meeting as much as we can.
Yes.
Okay. So we have the work groups that we need to also need to tell you how well staffed they are, or volunteer. We'll report back any status change that they have. We'll prepare for a meeting with legal counsel. We'll report also what happens in tomorrow morning's meeting. I'll continue to put financial reports on every single one. I don't expect there to be any huge changes unless there is an outpouring of donations. And then I think we'll probably touch, are we going to meet with, you said the 18th is Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll meet one more time before you meet.
Well, I'll be getting together with Mary Ellen, probably, hopefully sometime this week.
Sure.
The 18th of Tuesday, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll touch base with Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission.
That meeting's at 6. We can talk about the logistics of that. But.
I've been really bad at going to Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission meetings.
So our next meeting will be the 11th, is that correct?
Yes.
We know the sheriff, we'll go down and get you something.
So our next meeting is the 11th at 7 p.m. Seriously? September 11th?
How about that?
I think we could probably do it right here in the office.
I think this is the place to be.
It seems like that's another thing that we said we wanted to check is do we have sufficient room here? I think
we do.
We're packing it in, but I think we're doing all right. There's not like people out in the hall or anything?
We can always open the windows so they can work through.
Channel 7 is doing a great service keeping this on TV too. I think that recaps it, except for the last thing that we put on there is, if you don't mind if I jump ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
We put an executive session on here, but because we don't have legal counsel here, we can't legally go into executive session without them. But the reason why we put this on there is we didn't know if we would have any correspondence, and we wanted to keep open that opportunity. Keep in mind that at some point in time, we will have to go into an executive session, and at that point in time, we'd like the public to be understanding that some things have to happen. But, sorry, some things have to happen behind closed doors. Try to be as open and transparent as possible, but meeting with legal counsel and developing legal strategy needs to be done behind closed doors, and we want to just get that out in the open now.
I think you need to know that we trust you implicitly. Absolutely, we really do.
Me or Chuck?
All of you.
If you want to open, I'm done with everything. I think I'm all set.
Next thing we have on the agenda again is public comment. So if anyone has anything they'd like to say, now's the time.
No, we can go with good night. Yes,
George.
Well, we talked about what has happened and who owns what. What about talking about what are we gonna do with it? You've gotta come up with a plan. You know it's not gonna remain as a hospital. You've gotta come up with another plan to use the buildings, keep the ER room, that's all we wanna do. And I think we ought to have a task force, looking into that with ideas.
We are looking into every possible idea, George. That we're not closing our minds to anything.
Well, it used to be a nursing home. And the buildings are so designed that they can be used again as a nursing home. It would be a nursing home with an ER in it, which would be unusual. Second place, these hospitals are kicking out patients that have to go to have some care. Let them go back to the St. Andrews. They have the doctor to help in case they need something. And that's the way I see to use it. Because you'll never go back to a hospital. Remember, the Quakers were surgeons. They kept their buildings full because they did the operation. Nobody operates there anymore.
I think that's a good point too, and I did have a question about earlier, just a clarification, Jim, you mentioned that when you talked to the lawyer, you talked about the ultimate goal, and you said that it was the retention of the emergency department. But there were other things that are
Absolutely.
closing at this April point too. Yeah. And I think a big, I'm hearing that possibly a big issue is also the closing of the skilled nursing beds.
Absolutely. No question.
So I would just maybe include that. I know then you talked about the status quo or what we have now. So.
No, you're right. I wasn't sure what the answer to that question was, so I went with what I knew that I was hearing was the retention in the emergency department.
I think what George is talking about too is if, if we had a group of people who could think pie in the sky, what could we put in those buildings that would make enough money to keep some beds open and an emergency room open, still calling it a hospital, but have maybe a clinic for Lyme disease or, any number of things that are needed, a need that could be met, plastic surgery, any numbers of things that would like to be in pretty little Booth Bay Harbor, and that we could kind of tack our emergency room and hospital beds onto and make it financially viable. And I know that doesn't speak to being part of the greater Lincoln County healthcare. It doesn't talk to, being part of any other big thing, but just our own little happy little place down here.
Well, we could
Well,
put together a
you've
work
got
group.
rehab, which is an important part.
Right.
And you've also got there's a word for it, which I don't know, but when a person's ready to die.
Hospice.
Hospice.
Yeah.
There's another word, but that's it, palliative.
Well, I think we could put together a work group to look at different ideas,
Isn't that what
like
we're-
the ones that the lady has
Just
mentioned.
pie in the sky. If we could start all over again, what could we do that would make it pay for itself and be creative? And that's the way great things happen, when you start thinking like that.
But look at the advantages of having rehab there, because people from the Booth Bay region go there for rehab and their friends visit them.
No
And
argument.
the same for the other, the dying. I mean, they don't want to have to go to Miles or Portland or someplace. They won't. I mean, the friends won't.
Helen?
As long as it's kept accredited, you can keep your ambulance.
Right.
But if it's not accredited, you can't. We need something that is going to be accredited for everything.
Yeah.
Then you've got your ambulance. So whatever, if we take it beyond and it doesn't go the way we want it, and they want to do something else, which is a great idea, and but you got to remember, it has to be accredited. Okay.
No?
Instead of doing a separate task force, I second your point. I brought it up last week too, that I thought we needed to have a group talk about what is the vision for what we could use and want. But I had assumed that we would be tackling that in the first work group. In Bruce McDonald's one, where we're really talking about what do we want a community hospital to be, and maybe also in the Lincoln County
Community
planning group. So that's where I was planning to jump in and tackle those. So.
It'll definitely help create volunteers for your efforts if there's a very ambitious goal too.
There's nothing that's off the table when you're talking about a community hospital. You can configure it in lots of different ways.
Folks, I'd like to take another opportunity to, again, thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. It just is very heartening to me, and I'm sure to everybody else up here, to continue to see the public output, the concern. Keep holding us accountable. We are going to do the best we can for you. There's nothing that isn't on the table. We're gonna try to find the best solution we can for Booth Bay region for your healthcare. That's what we're shooting for here. So thank you guys very much for what you're doing. We appreciate it. I appreciate it.
If there's no one else, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming out again tonight.